Seeing as how it's 6:30, I have moved laterally, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. Larry, if you can join us tonight.
Who am I? I'm the chair.
Brian, I guess.
Julie knows.
I don't know. He doesn't know.
All right, can you leave him one and then take one and pass it along?
I will.
All right, as
Thanks.
everybody signed in? Okay, as soon as these three people
I'm doing well. Yourself? I'm glad to see you here. No,
how many more out
but
there?
you're young.
Can you,
Last one I see is Walter.
okay,
I can't see beyond him.
all right, thanks.
You should have brought friends. Oh, I forgot about those. Oh, you did? I'm so sorry. I was going like crazy today.
No, I didn't watch
Thank you, sir.
And I am the black sheep of the family.
But we've always known that. Okay.
How the hell is your phone?
So all this is conservation.
I had some new whole thing on it and everything else. We are a town this size. Has been. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's supposed to put your hand in his throat.
Yes, yes, it is.
That's the tax base.
And it doesn't come up. Yeah, it just screws up our tax base terribly.
So
But
since you're
at the
going to
same
be
time, we've got to
vice chair today, there is a public comment component to this after the board has its word.
After this?
Yeah, after this.
Oh,
Or
okay.
in it, there is a public
so
comment
puts us on a bad side.
portion of this.
Haven't realized that.
They're going to do their thing,
Yeah.
present to the board, ask their questions, whatever you want to hear from what they want to hear from you.
Requirements.
Make no decisions, then open the public hearing for public comment.
But we don't have public hearings scheduled for that.
But there has to be a public comment component to this.
So what's the difference between comment and hearing?
It's not a,
This is yours.
there has to be one. I'll show you later.
This is on the
Okay.
forestry
But
thing.
the deal here is, there's lots of people here, they're gonna wanna say the same thing over and over again to pound it into your heads. You should tell them the rules here are, if somebody says something, and it's the same as your comment, don't go up and do it again.
Yeah.
And limit it to 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and make sure that everybody gets to speak once before a person gets to speak again.
Yeah.
Is that your favorite chair? Yeah.
No, I'd rather be in one like you.
It's the one that I.
You know what? I'll take this one. I'll take that. Oh.
Not like we're talking about. Insurance, right?
Isn't that nice? I know. Tell her. Make sure you tell her. Wait, let me read, okay? Thank you.
can't buy, you can buy them online.
So that's on the preliminary. There's a public comment portion. Comment to, developer. Would you be willing? It's a small.
Can you make that?
Chair. That's what you.
Change the light bulb.
It's about the motor.
All right, we can begin now. I'm going to open for public comment on any agenda items that you may have that are not on the agenda. So if you have, public wants to make a comment on something that is not on the agenda, then now would be your opportunity. Go ahead, Larry.
Chairman, may I speak as a member of the public?
Okay.
Okay. Last night, there was a selectmen's meeting regarding the acceptance of $74,000 in unanticipated state funds, which came to the town based on state funds based on the number of free and reduced lunch students in the district. If you know someone who would be eligible for a free and reduced lunch, please have them contact the school district. Every person who is eligible for that program helps pump up the money that is available to the town next year for this program of state aid. Thank you.
All right, if that was it, then I'll close public comment on that, and we'll move on to a public hearing for the proposed draft subdivision regulations. The current regulations are last revised in December of 2010, and we have a draft that's been published and is out.
I have a quick question. There was nothing to tell us what the changes were from earlier regulations. Is that?
No highlighting, no stretch throughs, nothing.
The old ones are, as you know, the old ones are posted on the website because they're still in force, but there is a place on the planning board webpage where the new proposed subdivision regulations were posted as well.
But it doesn't say
But it's not easy
where
to
the
find
changes are
unless you
at all.
go page
You have
by
to go
page by page.
document to document, which seems kind of
Unusual. Usually when you make corrections or changes, you either strike a line through it or you underline it or highlight it.
It's a
or-
complete rewrite. It's not a revision.
That only happens when you do a revision.
So every single word is changed, there's nothing to say.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'll explain this if you allow me to. I mean, one of the things that the planning board did was take a look at how old the current subdivision regulations were that the board has that regulates folks that want to come in and subdivide their properties. The last time that it was even revised was 9 years ago. So there are several aspects of the subdivision regulations currently in place that don't jive with current state statute. They don't jive with best management practices, and they especially don't jive with all of the safeguards that the board really wants to make sure developments in town adhere to. You know, like stormwater runoff protection, groundwater protection, and a lot of other things. Those things were well behind the times. And so the board decided to throw out the old subdivision regulations and move on to new. That's really the explanation in a nutshell.
So what you're telling us then is, since these are so current, that everything that we find in here should apply to this proposal?
Not until they're adopted.
The answer's some of it, but not all of it, because again, the applicant for the Northeast Pond proposal that we'll take up later really is following the open space subdivision regulations that are contained within the zoning ordinance. So it is a different animal.
All right, thank you, Bruce. All right, well then if we have no other comments, I'll bring it back to the, close the public comment and bring it back to the board.
I mean, we've all been through this. I make a motion. We went through this line by line, word by word. I'd make a motion. We accept these.
I'll second.
Unless there's any other discussion from the board.
A motion and a second, any discussion? Larry?
Yeah, that over time, we have, as Matt said, spent several hours going over the details of it. And again, what Bruce said is very much on the mark, that if your ordinance is out of compliance with current state law, it doesn't matter what typeface you used, it doesn't matter how elegant your sentences are, you are out of compliance with state law, and that will carry. So it is just good thinking to bring your regulations up to date. Thank you.
All right. Then call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, opposed? Okay. All right, now review and discussion of the draft CIP report.
Okay, thank you. Oh my God. This one is in, right?
I'll wait until everybody gets their copies so that you can follow along in the script while I do a little bit of explaining with regard to this. As you know, the planning board has worked for about 7 months on this capital improvement program recommendation report, and the usual time is a little less than 5 months. We start in April, which we did, and there were issues this time. You charged me at your last meeting with preparing the recommendation report for 2020 through 2025 capital improvement program. I did that, and the draft is before you. What I sent you all via email attachment is a little bit different than the one that I just handed out. And I'm going to go through the changes that were made, and you can follow along in the script. Again, I'm talking about the actual narrative language for the recommendation report. If you turn to page 3, four bullets up from the bottom, where right now it says put off the $25,000 for the purchase of a fire ladder truck 1 until next year. Again, that was one of your recommendations, but I met with the fire chief at noon today, and what he told me was that funding has been approved by the Board of Selectmen to remove the money that's already saved in the capital reserve account for this, and I believe that the purchase is well underway, and Ryan can shake his head up and down if that's true. And so what I did was I changed that bullet to say remove the requirement for the $25,000 from the CIP for the purchase of fire ladder truck 1. Next, if you'll turn to page 4, bullet at the top, it's very similar to the same thing. You did recommend putting off the incremental $5,000 to be put into the capital reserve fund for the 2021 purchase of fire department car 1. But again, I believe that the Board of Selectmen, I think last night, approved using money in the existing capital reserve savings to purchase the car without the need to raise it in taxes next year. So what I've done is change that to say, remove $5,000, the incremental $5,000 from the capital reserve fund for the 2021 purchase of the fire department car because of the existing capital reserve savings that can do it. Now on to the second paragraph on page 4. I realized that I used the wrong number. In that sentence, it says the foregoing changes, if followed, would result in a reduction from, and it did say $788,290.72. That's been changed to the proper figure of $711,600.67. And to finish the sentence, it makes your cap of $504,050 for 2020 capital year project tax levy costs. It just used to say costs, but it now says tax levy costs, so that's a change that I made for clarity. And finally, on the last page, on page 6, first sentence, which is a really long one, so you know that I wrote it, says originally that the recommendation bullets above show that there are no not recommended projects. However, several projects are recommended for no funding this year to resume in 2021. The sentence ended there, but I have added this clause, predicated on the idea that most, if not all, of the equipment or vehicles being saved up for replacement in the future can continue useful life for an additional year. Those are the sum total of the revisions made between when you received this on Monday or Sunday or whenever it was, and today. I made the requisite changes in the ratings, rankings, and recommendation sheet as well under the recommended column to reflect the bullet changes that we just talked about. The only thing that I would like to say about this plan is that I believe that I've done everything that the board has asked me to do with regard to your recommended bullets and recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, the Budget Committee, the School Board, possibly the Library Trustees. I hope you've had a chance to take a look at it. You met your recommended project cap, just about, which was $500,000. So you came in at a recommended capital improvement program total amount, this is tax levy costs, of $504,050. So that you were very close. If you wish me to go down and read the bullets, Mr. Chairman, so that the people in the audience can hear this, I can do that.
I suppose that we should do that.
Again, it's not necessary. What I'm asking you to do tonight with this draft, this final draft of the capital improvements program, is is approve the language for sending it to a public hearing on December 3rd.
Is that too soon?
Pardon?
That's not too soon?
No, that's the right amount of time.
Okay.
Has to be 10 days. So that's really what I'm looking for from the board tonight, is to tell me if you need further changes to this, or if you see errors. And then even if you do, I can make those changes and we can send this language to public hearing. And what that means is that we'll post this proposed capital improvement program for 2020 through 2025, both on the website and posted here in Town Hall for anyone to read. And then the public hearing will be held on the 3rd, I hope.
Well, and we have from the schools, they are still underneath the amount that they believe they're gonna get. Are their estimates, are they on with new estimates?
Everything is up to date with regard to the school
Okay.
submissions.
All right.
And we know now that the vote that took place the other night, those monies will be used to do the engineering for the fire alarm system and the air handling systems. And so there's no effect on the tax levy with regard to those two projects. And that's been subtracted, already from your total of 504.
All right. Is there anything from the Board of Selectmen that we need to consider based on your two actions? Collective actions. I mean, that seems straightforward.
Yeah, the ladder truck that's definitely all set. I will be honest, I'm a little confused about the car one, but I don't know if the board doesn't mind asking. I'll ask the fire chief, he's in the back, if that's all right.
So the money was freed up because we got the air pack grant. So the ladder truck will be about 100,000, all said and done. And then the remaining 60,000 that's currently plus interest, that's currently in that capital reserve is enough to fund the project to replace the car when it's due to be replaced. So we don't need to ask for additional money, it's already set aside. But again, it all comes back to that money being freed up by the grant for the FX that we got.
And
Which is
Okay.
what I discussed when we met in spring.
Well, that was a hope then.
There was a lot of hopes and
Yeah.
pending things, and it all kind of played out the way I anticipated. The only thing that played out quicker than I anticipated was finding a ladder truck that was actually the right truck for the community, and it was 50 to 75,000 cheaper than we had discussed in the spring. So that's the summary of it.
Okay, thanks.
And for clarity, it doesn't change your bottom line, because the board chose, according to their ranking of these submitted projects, your board chose to suggest that the 5,000 for the car one be put off until 2021 instead of 2020.
Right.
And you also did the same for the ladder truck amount. So it turns out that the money piece doesn't change at all.
All right. I think that the detail on the bullets is probably, go ahead, Larry.
Oh, I was just going to speak to that. And my suggestion would be to go through these bullets because we are seeing more people come with more involvement, more interest, and good questions for how town and school funds are being spent. And these bullets show the remarkable detail of work that is done, even moving $5,000, $400, trying to get the useful life of a given piece of equipment extended for one more year. And on that basis, even though it's not a public hearing, I think it's good information. Tell them once, tell them twice, and more information is good information.
All right, then, let's go through them.
All right, before I read the bullets, I'm gonna do a little backstory and explanation for everybody really quickly. The board looked at submissions for 6 years in the capital improvement program. The first year is 2020, that's the upcoming, that will be adjudicated, decided by the voters at the 2020 town meeting in individual warrants. But the bottom line is that the board considered 22 project submissions that would come up in 2020, and the rest of them we really didn't pay too much attention to, except in looking at the aggregate system and as to whether it was smoothed out year on year. So what came out of that was that the planning board reviewed all of those 22 submissions, the sheets and the information given to them by department heads, and then using an established criteria rating system, rated each one. The ratings were collected and then averaged so that we could get to a ranking of the projects, 1 through 22. The bottom line here is that the projects, as they went down the rankings, also had the total costs next to them. Each one was added up until you got to about that $500,000 figure that you said was the cap that you thought that voters might be more amenable to. The bottom line here is that some of those projects don't affect the tax levy. Such as the purchase of a police cruiser is purchased out of the money that's collected and saved into a capital reserve fund from detail work that they do. That's just one example. The other example is a future purchase of a roll-off truck where the town is incrementally saving the money into a capital reserve fund year on year for the useful lifespan of the existing vehicle. That money does not come from the tax levy. That comes from fees that are collected from the solid waste station and put into the capital reserve fund. So they're not included. That's why you did say that other projects that fell outside of that first 10 or whatever it was were important enough to fund, but you reduced some of those funds. And so that's what you're going to hear about now. And I'll preface this by saying the planning board is therefore recommending the following changes to the 2020 submittals contained on the CIP spreadsheet. 1, recommend funding the incremental savings into a capital reserve fund for the future beach restoration project. That's $3,000. 2, reduce the amount for the Maine New Hampshire Bridges Fund for 2026 this year from $25,000 down to $10,000. 3, use the state education windfall funds to pay for the 2020 engineering design of the new fire alarm systems in Newt and the elementary school. 4, recommend funding for the requested $18,000 for the police taser and body camera project. 5, use existing funds in the police detail capital reserve fund to pay for the replacement of cruiser car 1. 6, use the state education windfall funds to pay for the 2020 engineering design of the 2 new air handling systems in the elementary school. 7, recommend funding the requested $10,000 for the town technology project because the town's servers and computers are old and are at risk of cyber attacks and breakdowns. 7, do they say that already? Because they're not numbered. Put off the incremental $1,000 for the capital reserve fund for future purchase of the DPW 10-ton trailer until next year. 8, reduce the amount for the library renovation project this year from $25,000 down to $20,000. 9, put off the incremental $400 for the capital reserve fund for future purchase of the DPW 3-ton trailer until next year. 10, put off the incremental $667 for the capital reserve fund for future purchase of the DPW Bandit wood chipper until next year. 12, reduce the amount for the DPW road projects this year from $350,000 to $300,000. 13, reduce the amount for the 2021 replacement of fire engine 4 from $40,000 to $30,000, which will require recalculating the lease payments in the following years. 14, reduce the amount for the GIS system 5-year plan data sets project this year from $3,000 to $2,500. 15, put off the incremental $5,000 for the capital reserve fund for future purchase of the DPW 1-ton pickup with plow and sander until next year. 15,
16.
16, thank you. Put off the incremental $12,000, which is 4, 4, and 4, for the capital reserve fund for the future purchase of the DPW 2027, 2028, and 2029 Ford F-250 pickups with plows until next year. 17, remove the requested $25,000 for the purchase of fire ladder truck 1 funding from 2019. It really should say from the request, because the money was approved for being taken out of the CRF by the Board of Selectmen on 11/18. 18, put off the incremental $6,250 for the capital reserve fund for future purchase of the DPW excavator until next year. 19, put off the incremental $1,800 for the CRF, capital reserve fund, for future purchase of the DPW Ford 5000 tractor with boom mower until next year. 19,
20.
20, put off the incremental $50,000 for the CRF for future engineering costs for the new DPW garage until next year. 21, remove the incremental $5,000 for the CRF for 2021 purchase of fire department costs. 1, funding to purchase will come from existing savings in the CRF. 22, put off the incremental $8,266.67 for the CRF, and again, that means capital reserve fund, for future purchase of the DPW payloader with forks until next year. 23, recommend funding the requested $7,400 incremental amount for the future purchase of a roll-off truck, because the funding does not come from the tax levy, comes from the transfer station fees saved into a CRF. And finally, put off the $10,000 annual funding requested by the Three Ponds Protective Association for the European Naiad Eradication Project until next year. The foregoing changes, if followed, would result in a reduction from $711,600.67 down to $504,050 for the 2020 capital year project tax levy costs. And finally, the board further recommends that the town work with the UNH Technology Center to gather the necessary data and purchase the software for the road surface management system that will enable the Department of Public Works to prepare an annual road improvement program. The program will prioritize roads in need of repair, rehab, or reconstruction, and create an annual priority list of projects in town. That's it.
All right. And, we need a motion to schedule the public hearing.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Yes, post the language, schedule the public hearing, approve the language
You like to
proposed.
talk.
in
Go
there.
for it.
Oh, okay.
I move to approve the language and post the public hearing for the date of December 3rd.
I'll second.
All right. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, there's another one.
want to thank Bruce for preparing all this and doing all this work.
Yes.
And for Mr. Brown for assisting us with the school, putting in your extra time, assisting us, getting that information, and bringing them in. So that was very appreciated and very helpful in this whole process. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. You get that, Ashley? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, we'll move on to the, item number 5, site walk discussion. For the site, we had, the site walk on Veterans Day. Where we went out to, the tax map lot, 41, lot 81. Beth, you wanna?
No, I don't
No.
want to. You want me to read it? Is that what you want?
No, this is from Virginia Long. This is not from us.
Oh, what is it you're wanting me to read then?
Not to read, or to discuss the
The
site
site.
walk.
Well, all of us went out there and we looked at it and we walked around and all, and we found quite a few high spaces on it and low, and it has a lot of wetlands. We did decide that after reviewing it and everything else, it is on a parcel that is on 75. That our recommendation. Do you want me to tell our recommendation?
Well,
or what? Go ahead.
I think unless it was held as a regular board meeting, the recommendations could not come from that sidewalk, which was only an observation.
You may have
Okay,
talked
there
about it,
are-
but you made no decision.
Right.
Right. Okay.
That's-
Sorry.
And I, just for clarification, I was not at the site walk, so.
No.
Neither was I.
just-
Sorry.
Okay.
Everyone that was there, please raise your hand for identification and who was there. at the
Well, and
sidewalk.
Brian was there.
Yes.
We did come up with some questions. You know, why is it in the town portfolio? You know, so there's some history that we were unable to determine. So why has it not been developed? Was there any movement to develop it? And Brian was gonna
And there
bring
is a
that
house right
information.
next to it where the property is up higher and so it is buildable.
Do we know how long it's been town-owned? Anybody know that?
That's, as I said, Brian was
I
gonna,
think that was the problem.
yeah, he was gonna get some of that information, and
Because
so
it
we don't
didn't
have
show
that.
up. Right.
Where is this property?
On
It's
75.
map lot, where did I go? 20, tax map 41, lot 81. It's on 75, up, about halfway up the hill, just before Governor's Road. So you have Governor's Road, then there's one house, then there's this lot, which is town-owned, and then there's another house. It's 3 acres, and some small change.
3.05, I think it is.
And it backs up to the, to some conserved lands that last showed up on the ballot as a town forest proposal. So there was a question whether we should include this town-owned lot into the conserved lands or not. This is not a decision from the planning board, this is a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. And
Yes.
without some, why is it in the town? It was taken tax?
I believe so, that's my understanding.
Yeah.
I was not aware of those questions till just now, so I
Okay, yeah.
wasn't obviously there at the site walk, because I couldn't be. But unfortunately, it sounds like Brian was gonna get that information, so
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
not here, so I'd recommend that we table this until
That,
we have all the additional information.
Okay.
that sounds like,
Can
Yeah.
I, what additional information do you need?
how long has it been owned by the town?
It hasn't, it's never been owned by the town.
Oh, it's taken on a tax,
I'm being a little obtuse on purpose,
okay.
because we really should follow the statute here. The town doesn't own that piece of land. The town holds a tax deed.
Mm-hmm,
That is not the same as owning the land in fee.
okay.
And so, the reason why the statute says that if the Board of Selectmen has an idea that they would like to acquire the land in fee to do something with it for the benefit of the public, that request has to first go to the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission for their recommendation on whether to do it or not. And so it's not to conserve it, it's whether to acquire the land in fee so that you can do something with it that benefits everyone, rather than putting it up for auction and selling it back to the public so that it would go back on the tax rolls. So there's a couple of different things that can happen. I don't see where knowing when the tax deed was done makes any difference to this recommendation. Town does not own this land yet.
Okay.
That's what this is about. Some of the things that you need to know is that the land does abut the recently acquired conservation land. I think it's the Casey Road development. I'm looking over here. Looking over this, Casey Road
Yeah.
conserved land. It abuts that. It might, and this is a question that you might ask the folks from the Conservation Commission that are in the audience. It might provide access, or they might tell you that they would never have access on there, like an access driveway and parking or something to get in there. As you know, there is a stream that runs through the lot. Some of it's wet. You were supplied with some photos today and a letter. That should go into your consideration for the recommendation as well. That's really all I have to say about it.
This is it?
Do you know how much taxes are owed on that?
No.
The tax deed's already done.
And I believe you did say that to August when we were, walking that, piece of land and everything.
You want to read this, have this read in? I don't know.
Here's some pictures if you guys would like to look at them. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I sound like.
Spending too much time on the money Kubota.
Tell me about it.
Place for a condo.
So, Ryan, what is it that you're saying, that you feel there needs to be more information, or what?
Well, I thought it sounded like the board felt there would need to be more information before they could make the decision. I wasn't there at the site walk, so
I know.
I was just going off from what I was hearing for the board and was trying to help move things along. So it sounds like that information really is irrelevant, that we're
We may
looking
have been a
for.
little ahead of the question.
Yeah.
Because what that leads to is, there's not a house on it like there are on the two adjoining lots.
Right.
Why not? And that would be tied backwards to the previous question about how long and what, why did the town put the taxes, well, I mean, that's obvious why you put the tax.
But is it
Because the
relevant?
taxes weren't paid.
Yeah, but is it
There's thousands
relevant
of
at
reasons
this
why that was
point?
never
Yeah,
developed.
right.
Yeah, it's
The question
irrelevant
would
at this
be-
point, isn't it?
It's hard for us to recommend
Yeah.
without knowing what the possibilities are. But the possibilities don't matter. Is that what you're saying, Bruce?
Right. Much.
Well, obviously, the possibility is that the town could decide not to acquire the land and to put it up for auction. And then if someone purchases it, the town would accrue that money plus future tax money. But you have to stack that up against a public purpose, conserving lands that deserve to be conserved. And that's a decision that only you can make, and that's really the crux of it in my mind.
Go ahead, Larry.
Okay. Other comment. I happen to be one of the people who has been down on the old Swanee River. There is a boardwalk down there. The reason I mention that is for use of the property with the stream going through it. It suggests that either you find a conservation-approved way of crossing that stream, or you're really dealing with only a half of the property. One of the things that it does have as an advantage is that it is contiguous. Another thing that needs to be considered is when you go up to the New Hampshire Farm Museum, right across from us is the trail system, and a trail system that you can access from the New Hampshire Farm Museum parking lot, and a small parking lot on the other side of the road, which accesses Mackenzie's and which accesses walking trails going down to the Salmon Falls. When people were discussing the Casey Road, quote, forest, there was a brief nose bend that the location of that parcel turned it into a private preserve for the people who were already lucky enough to live on Casey Road. We don't know the distribution of population and the access from Route 75 that might be generated by that parcel being a public access point more accessible than going down Winding Hill or going down in Casey. So on that basis, the parcel is useful because it is contiguous. It expands the present town forest park parcel. It protects the Great Brook for the distance it goes across that property. So, and as Bruce said, the land is immortal. Who owned it when and what the tax situation are all water down the stream.
Oh, you should be able to do better than that, Larry. Water under the bridge, maybe.
No bridge, water down the stream.
Okay.
Okay, can I make a recommendation myself?
Sure.
Now,
Okay.
on this,
My recommendation is that, right now, this town screams for tax relief. This is land that we could actually make some kind of, maybe not a large impact, but a start. We have conservation land that I think is abundant at this point compared to other small towns like ours. And I'm for putting it up for auction or for sale, whichever one, by a realtor, and recommending that for the BOS.
Okay, Joe?
my thoughts on property rights owners is, very much pro property owner. So the unfortunate aspect of this coming into the town, possibly, to the tax levies is unfortunate. However, in I think a current position that we're in, it would almost be cynical of us when we always have such shortages everywhere not to turn around and try to raise some revenue for it. So I'm in agreement with you on that. It's a nice piece of property. the owner, if someone purchases it, they could very well turn it over to the Conservation Commission. You get some funds. But I think that's one step at a time, and you know, it's up to them. They'll have to jump through all kinds of hoops to actually, you know, build on that property. But that would be whoever requires it, if they so won't choose to. I think to add it to conservation, when we are hurting, like we are, is be fiscally irresponsible for us. My take.
Larry?
Just did some quick math. Take a $10 million budget. Say that we have 2,000 homes in the town. Each one is $200,000. An average tax of $5,000. If you start doing the division, I think you get 1/2% of the value of this parcel for taxes over time and an irrevocable loss to parkland. I would also add that conservation lands are a moving definition. There are there are properties which are in current use. There are levels of current use. There is conservation through farmland, and there is the ownership of some 700 acres, about 350 acres each, from the society and from UNH, and that accounts for a good portion of the conservation. There's going to be at the very end of this month, there's going to be a meeting on new proposals for the value of conserved forest land and unproductive land, wetlands, hardwoods, and pine. It's going to be at Pleasant Street in Concord, or you can go all the way up to Lancaster. But so that again, that's the absolute value of one parcel compared to its long-term environmental uses.
Now, if
Okay,
you-
in rebuttal to that, we have to start somewhere.
And
And this would be a start.
We discussed prior, before, that, when it come to the, CIP with the library, we're gonna cut it, we only cut it 5,000, because it's easy to screen, come up with 5,000 if necessary. We gotta start somewhere. Please,
And this is just one parcel that we have
when
to
it
start
continues
with.
to bleed, there are gonna be more houses on the market. Gotta stop somewhere.
Do we know the total percentage of conservation land in Milton?
Roughly, it's over 20%.
And how does that compare with other towns of our size?
So it's more than many other towns. There are some towns way up north that are 100% conservative, but nobody lives there. The average is probably around 15% or so,
Right.
15-16%.
So I think one of the factors, I guess for me, when looking at this and considering this is, okay, we're kind of looking at what is it going to add or how is it going to impact the town wise, but if we look at how is it going to impact the Casey Road Conservation Land Project, I believe when Karen came and presented to us that there really, if this was to go to that project, there was no intentions to really have any access off 75 to that land, if I remember right.
Well, we were forced to park about 200 yards up the road, almost on the Governor's Road, because there was no parking. There is on the map, there is a
Driveway.
driveway shown, but it's not be usable.
So I guess what I'm saying is this, it's gonna add more land mass to that. It would add more land mass to that project if the recommendation was for it to go that route, but it's not gonna necessarily add any more access to it or what do I wanna say? was a way to say, bring more people in that would want to go on a hiking trail or something, because you're still going to access it from Casey Road, not from Route 75.
Mhm.
All right, anything different, additional?
I would recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they either put it up for auction or acquire it and put it up for sale.
Is that a motion?
Yeah.
All
I
right.
second.
All right.
Could we add to that it be sold by a realtor? Why, for quickness and everything? I think that was something,
It has to be auctioned, I thought.
is it going to be auctioned then?
Well, no, I mean, the selectmen,
Well, that's why I'm saying. can
again,
we
this
make
is
that
a recommendation. That's all we're doing. We're making a
Right.
recommendation to them to either do it or don't.
Right.
Um,
All I'm thinking about is when we had the fire station, how long it took to sell it.
That was a
There's a lot of
whole
different-
different can of worms. That wasn't
Yeah,
tax
no, that,
That's a whole different can of worms.
Okay, then, never mind.
Yes, discussion.
Okay, Larry.
So,
If, one, that knocks 6% off the selling price, and two, if it's that valuable, somebody will jump on it.
that's true.
Yeah, I believe that the paperwork that we received at the last meeting said that land was evaluated at $33,000
And it was going down.
Right,
and going down.
it had gone down.
I can't imagine any land that's buildable going down in this time.
And I
Land is
guess,
becoming a premium.
and I guess with using a realtor, we might have more chances of them advertising it more and getting it out. That's the only reason I was recommending that.
I would
All right.
think, I mean, I'd just let them decide how they wanna do it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
up
we-
to the board.
That's
Yeah,
up
we
to
don't-
them. That's why they get the big bucks.
All right, then, Matt? No, okay.
I recommend we
That's-
recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they acquire it and then try and sell it, however they decide to sell it.
Okay,
Auction or-
well, then we'll take a vote.
I'm going to abstain.
Probably is proper.
Well, I wasn't at the site walking, I'm on the
No.
Board of Selectmen, so
Yeah, that's
I'd abstain.
All right, so the recommendation is to,
Second, or recommendation,
okay, send it to the Board of Selectmen.
yes.
All
All in favor?
Larry?
I was waiting for the formula.
Yeah, we're waiting for the formula from you. All in favor?
Waiting for you to roll call.
I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
The motion is to, da-da-da.
The motion was to make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, who's, where am I getting this? To try and acquire it and dispose of it.
Not acquire it.
No, but
Can't
this,
be, because then you're double talking. It can't be to acquire it.
Okay.
right,
If that's your motion,
No, that's not the motion.
That wasn't what I said.
All right, can you restate, please?
Recommend that the Board of that we recommend to the Board of Selectmen that they either either
no,
put it up for auction or sale through a realtor. Is that right?
Okay.
you should run for office.
That work?
way ahead for conservation purposes. That's the motion, that I think you're trying to say.
All right.
Not acquire the land for conservation
But
purposes.
to put it up for,
No,
that's it, okay.
Yeah, that exceeds our recommending authority.
Okay.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I
Larry?
abstain.
And one abstention. Okay. So, that's all. I now move to item 6, continued preliminary review of the application for an open space subdivision for a parcel located on Northeast Pond Road, tax map 23, lots 40 and 44. The applicant is proposing the subdivision of a 49-acre lot into 2 lots, creating one development lot of 5.04 acres and a second open space lot of 43.96 acres. Proposal is to cluster 3 buildings containing 36 two-bedroom condo units on the 5-acre lot and dedicate permanent open space on the 43.96 acre lot.
Is it on? Down there on the bottom? It's not plugged in. There should be a, yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Paul Block, Milton Plains Associates.
You need to get closer to the mic, that's all.
I'm Paul Blanc. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's
Okay.
Perfect.
I'm Paul Blanc from Norway Plains Associates. I'm here representing Three Ponds Investment LLC. We had a preliminary application a couple months ago in front of the board. At the end of that meeting, we decided to have a site walk in October, I think, Columbus Day around. I was not present at that site walk. I guess I could ask for show of hands who was there. And the applicant is a little bit. Excellent. So, would you like to discuss what you found at the site walk first?
Hilly.
Hilly? Okay.
Yeah, it was hard walking.
Hard walking? Hard walking, yeah.
I noticed there were a lot of trees along the road and everything that were discussed for cutting or non-cutting down if this thing were to go through. So,
The trees you're talking about is along Bolin Road, is that correct?
yes,
Yep.
yes.
Would it be helpful if I put that plan up
It
there?
would, it would.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's easier for the audience to see, and I can put it here, since you guys all
Yeah,
have
that's
plans.
fine.
Yeah, we've got,
Okay.
Just as long as it's not in front of the speaker or anything.
Would that be,
That's good. Can you guys see it all?
y'all seen it?
I'll hold it up if you like.
don't we have an easel here?
No, if you want to hold
There's
it
an easel right
up.
over
I'll
here.
hold it up.
Oh, wait, wait.
Oh, he's everything.
Oh, we've got an easel.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Keep the side conversations down a little, please.
It will be on the other side. This is not a public meeting.
Number 3.
Everybody was there.
Talk already.
How's that? Terrible, yeah,
I'm not
terrible.
sure the engineer understands the sight lines, but I can certainly hold that up.
Yeah, I think that'd be better.
So,
A little higher so people can see it.
is that everybody?
The sight line's not very good right here. There you go.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So, these were the trees that you were talking about right along Bolin Road.
I don't know, I can't see it.
Right along here.
Yes, I was.
Okay.
Yes. And there were also trees up on the top also. But Mr. Cheney did say that that is a consideration and that they would be flagged possibly, but that's just, we were talking about it, that's all. Because my concern was with some of the trees there.
So the concern was removal of the trees, and the trees would be
Yeah.
flagged?
Yes, on ones that would be removed and ones that wouldn't be.
Okay. Any-
What about wetlands and?
Now, this is not
No,
for comment yet.
proposing.
What are the colors?
This is not for comment yet.
What are the colors?
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
So-
sir.
Would you please identify the color choice?
Of course. So, so we're all set with the site walk. There was a lot of trees and everything, so we'll go to it down. So the buildings are in orange. The pavement is in a gray.
He's good.
Yes, thank you. The garages are in brown. The cyan are properties that, one's down by the lake down there that he has access to. The cyan.
There you go.
green. And then the gray one also is access, and then, yep. And then the red line, which is very difficult to see, is the proposed property line.
That's the divider between the 5 and the other lot?
Correct.
Okay.
And then the brown lines that go through it are proposed trails that is just an idea of where the trails could go if you got a trail network. Is that? So, if I then could, again, this is a pre-application.
Right.
I'd like to discuss the waiver requests. The first one is about having multifamily residential use in this area. We'd like to kind of discuss on how the board feels about that, having a multifamily use in this area.
I thought we were told that it was going to be for senior citizens.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be exactly what it would be used for. But it's underneath here, it says strictly conforming to single-family duplex residential. So this would be, it's just part of the wording that's in this,
Wording's everything.
Wording, yeah.
yeah, it is. So that's what in here, the regulations say, single-family and duplex residential dwellings, accessory use in buildings, in minor home occupations as permitted in the zoning district in which the parcel lies. That's the wording from the zoning regulations found in Article 6, Section 6, permitted use. So we're asking for a waiver, and instead of duplexes, it would be multifamily. It would house the elderly in the.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Did I misunderstand the direction of the meeting? Were we being asked for our reactions and observations from the site walk itself as beginning this discussion?
Now, what we're supposed to be doing
Yes.
is,
So I don't believe that there was any feedback from observations made by the people who were on that site walk. Do you wish to entertain them now?
when we're completed, I will.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
My time frame is off then, but.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
My apologies.
Again, the recommendation was for senior citizens. I think putting multifamily building.
Oh, it would be senior citizen. It's just, I guess I could say, what I read there is from the zoning.
More than 2 units is what
Yes,
that
but
means.
more than,
Can you give us some, do you know the legalities on that?
Her question is multifamily, you're thinking of it as a large family and what multifamily.
No, I'm not thinking large family, I'm thinking just family period.
Okay, that's not, the subdivision regulations, when it says multifamily, it means more than 2 units, more than a duplex.
The applicant is using open space development subdivision regulations. They're contained in the zoning ordinance. Under authority, in this open space development section, it says, this section is enacted in accordance with the provisions of New Hampshire RSA 67421, which is innovative land use controls, and New Hampshire RSA 674 16 through 20. This authority allows the planning board to grant conditional use permits, special use permits, if you've got them, and waivers from specific requirements of this article. The applicant is asking the board if at this juncture you are amenable, no decision though, but you could take a straw poll. They want to know before they move forward with engineering if you are amenable to granting a waiver from the requirement that only the types of homes or dwellings are constructed meet the underlying zoning district rules. And basically that says single-family homes and duplexes. So you have the ability to say, no, we wouldn't grant that waiver. We're gonna make you put in single-family or duplexes, or that we are willing to think about or willing to do it by consensus, pending any changes that would come along between now and when they would do a formal application. That's really what he's asking. You have that authority to waive it or not.
So, I have a question. If we were to deny this,
You're not gonna do it tonight.
no, I'm just saying, if we were, would that then require them to go back to their original plan of houses all over that? And not have the, and not have the,
Yeah, that's right. It does put an end. It's obvious that they need this waiver to move forward with this plan.
right, okay, thank you.
So the occupants would still be seniors, that's the idea, it's just the language of the, so it'd still be senior elderly housing, it's just the way the language needs to be. The planner is correct, so we need that waiver to move forward. And that's what we're looking for, because everything else kind of falls on that.
This wouldn't be a
Okay,
high
now-
rise.
Ryan?
I'd like to ask the planner
Okay,
another
yeah,
question
yeah.
based off that last question. So, and I understand there's no decision made tonight, but if the board so choose to entertain accepting that waiver, there could be additional restrictions with that waiver, like height of the building, size of the building.
When you
Can
get to
we
that,
do that,
when you get to the
or-
formal application in a public hearing, and you then take a vote on the waiver, you can add conditions to waiver.
So a condition could be that
But remember,
if it's gonna be,
I'm gonna ask you about the height waiver after this one too.
yeah, I see that's coming, but,
Yeah.
Larry?
I'm sure they're gonna talk to you about what the fire chief said. I think he's still in the room too.
Yes.
You can ask him questions unless he runs away.
Larry?
That the phrase that always appeals to me on every application when a waiver is being requested is for good cause shown. And I have heard you ask for it, but I have not heard for good cause shown. And so what is the good cause shown that makes this both a necessity and an advantage to the neighborhood?
The idea here is that we're minimizing the impact if we had the 34 units spread over the parcel, the 49 acres. So the impact would be less It'll be more concentrated in a smaller area. So you'd still have 34, and then you'd have 34 single family. It wouldn't be senior probably. 36, I'm sorry.
36, right?
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I misspoke.
36, okay. Anything more on this? Larry?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question necessarily touches the sidewalk, which I have been on twice now, several years ago. And if you would pardon my humor, chicken beef stew, you make it up 50-50, one chicken, one cow. And your area for development seems to be the choice. And the 43 acres that are left are more difficult for development and represents additional costs in putting the houses, be they duplex or single houses, in place. That is certainly a financial advantage. But how is that a good cause shown? And how does that work to the advantage of the existing neighborhood? That is what I see as the basis for a waiver. Not that the houses are tight together.
So what you're saying is that the yield plan that we have there shows more cost to develop than this this particular plan. That's one of the statements that you're saying. And then the yield plan has greater impacts, so you have more impacts on the wetlands, you'd have more driveways, more impervious surfaces. The control of the stormwater runoff is a little more, it's more managed by the homeowner. It's not managed by, here you collect everything and have to treat it. So, yeah, so when looking at this, from my standpoint, and just, I looked at it from the least impact to the environment. And that's where we came up with this one. And then, remember, this is prelim. There's a lot of things that have to be hatched out in terms of engineering, and we will conform to all the DES regulations. We do this a lot. But that's not, I'm hoping I'm answering your question a little bit.
Almost, if I may. If the a one-story ranch with a 512 pitch and a basement sticking a foot and a half out of the ground is the 2 feet plus 8 plus 5. It's under 20 feet tall. And I understand if you believe that this is going to be predicated, once you have a waiver, then it is predicated on height. I don't see how a waiver for this preserves a one-story ranch, be it single or duplex.
We're not on height right now, are we?
No,
we're saying
we're not. But I'm asking what the protection of the neighborhood is with your density.
Well, one of the things I do like is that it does encompass drainage and things of that sort, and that the company would be taking responsibility for that. Because one of the things I noticed on our walkthrough is through lands that are all on that road, there is drainage coming between properties and in uncontrolled systems into the pond. And that's a big concern, I'm sure. And this it sounds like would be more controlled.
This would be more controlled. I think what Larry was trying to get to is that, are you saying that these ranch-like style homes get put on that, there would be more like a duplex home. It would be like a 2-story with the probably 18-inch exposure like you talked about. That's more what we would be putting on those parts. It wouldn't be a ranch.
But they would be responsible for their own.
Yeah.
See,
So
and that's
what
my.
comes off the driveway is not regulated.
Right.
What comes off the roof is. So that needs to be captured, treated usually in what's called a rain garden, which is a small depression in the ground that has a filter media. There is discussion with the state people, because I work with them, to kind of change that, to tighten these regulations up. But right now, that's kind of how it works. So what we would do is each one of these house lots, we'd capture that and have a rain garden. Part of that means is that the landowner would maintain those. In this situation, you would have the condominium association
Right.
would manage that and have responsibility of the biannual maintenance as well as reporting. Hopefully I answered a little bit of that.
To my way of thinking, doing this type of development frees up a lot of land for just public use or whatever. I mean,
Association.
you're gonna have walking trails in there, it's open space. Right.
Yep, it would be. It would keep the little white rabbits running around there, and the hunters would keep hunting there.
Here's.
So I guess my comment, if we go back to, I think what we were trying to discuss, which was this first waiver, is, to me, it's hard to really say one way or another, because it kind of depends what type of multifamily development that's going in there and how the housing's going to be set up. I mean, I think a big factor for the town of Milton is, I mean, it needs to fit the character of Milton. And I'm not quite sure, looking at this, that it's completely fitting the character of all the homes that are around here. You've got a whole bunch of land here. A lot of it's being preserved, which I understand that's the point of this type of subdivision. But the building and the development is all towards one end of it, right where all the other houses are, and I don't really think this is gonna completely fit in with the surrounding houses very well.
That's what we're,
But I think that this is a better type of development to go for if this property is being developed, but it just needs to be, it needs to, I think, really focus on fitting the character of the town. So that's kind of where I'm at.
In
with
what
this.
way?
Well, if you, I mean, right now there's several trees over here, right? There's, I mean, these buildings, I don't want to jump to the next one, but these buildings look like they're going to be fairly high.
Oh, we haven't jumped to that. Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, all that comes into play. Limiting it to senior citizens, or the elderly, I guess I should say, I think is a good thing for the tax basis of the town of Milton, because of, it's gonna have less impact on the school system. But if that's the case, it needs to be very clear and defined in here, so things can't change going forward.
Right.
so what we're trying to establish at this point is whether the sense is that 18 houses is better than this, so that they can either move forward with engineering, so that answers the kind of questions that you're interested in, or they move forward on with a different plan. So that's the purpose of this plenary.
Right, so basically on the one hand, you have, well, we're willing to consider this future, versus, no, we won't consider it, and then they're gonna say, all right, I'm gonna put my engineering efforts into taking those 36 and making 36 units and spreading it out over the course of this land, and then figuring out how they're gonna do the water and that for each unit.
But I mean, I thought we did that to get to this point, right? Because they came to us way back and said, hey, would you consider this? And we said, yes. So now this is kind of preliminary of the first run of what this open space subdevelopment's gonna look like, right? Am I
Let me
not
ask,
understanding that correctly?
Without engineering.
Yep.
Now, I mean, everything was taped out, okay? So when you walked around, you could see where the buildings were gonna be. And I guess it's probably too early to ask the fire question, but
So I guess, I mean, do we wanna, are we gonna take a, not an official vote, but a yes or no on
I
what
know,
we're
which
feeling on
do you like,
these?
which do you like better, I
Yeah,
guess?
we're looking for actually an
Okay.
official vote.
before we do
Well, no,
that,
it's
can
not on a
we all-
preliminary, you're not gonna get an official vote.
Yeah,
We're-
Unofficial, just.
Yes, okay, yes.
We don't want anything.
You were gonna
official.
get a sense
Yeah.
of the board.
Where, yeah.
Larry?
But, well, there's one more thing that needs to be addressed. And it goes without saying that any good engineering study based on install, maintain, and monitor will preserve the flow characteristics of the site. The distinction, as I think I understand it here, is the presumption is that as built, the concentrated buildings will profit from a view shed involving an impact on the steep slopes, which would not otherwise occur in a development scattered throughout the site. So in terms of view shed protection from the other residences and from across the water, this plan has a higher view shed impact on the area.
that's still further down. We're still at the point of looking at it as multifamily and not.
But that,
I understand exactly what you're asking, but
I guess that's what Larry's question is asking, and to my point, I'm having a hard time saying yes or no to this waiver, not really understanding. I mean, you're proposing right now it's gonna be towards the end of the lot. If it was more so in the middle of the lot where it isn't affecting the neighborhood, so to say, as much, I might think a little differently on that waiver.
But you're trying to sell for view.
yeah, we're trying to,
That's
where the
why.
location is, yeah.
So that's, I guess, if you want feedback from me, I mean, I'm just one person on the board,
Of course we do.
that's
Fine,
my
that'd be perfect.
feedback for how this is located.
So
I think
location,
it's-
proximity,
It doesn't fit the neighborhood and it's too close to the surrounding, all the surrounding houses, and I think it's gonna have a negative impact on.
There's
and
already
that's kind of what
existing,
Larry's kind of saying about the
Yes.
views from the, yeah.
there's already existing water issues with it just being bare. Putting a bunch of big houses on there right at the end, I don't think it's gonna help.
As soon as we are done, then I will do the questions that you have,
It was not a question.
okay?
I was trying to point something out in the application, is all.
Well, when we get to that, we will get to it.
So me as one more individual, I would rather see this than I would 36 individual buildings. But again, same thing as Ryan stated, I don't like the location of it. I think it should be further back, away from that steep slope. That's me.
If it were put further back, then they couldn't sell it in a view and keep it to senior citizens.
They
Then
can
it
still
would-
keep it
then
to
would be
senior
mo-
citizens.
Sure you could.
They absolutely could keep it to senior citizens.
Not if they're selling it for view.
Well,
Well, yeah.
it doesn't fit. It's just like Ryan stated, it doesn't fit with everything around it.
I'm just
I
giving you
get you.
back.
No, I know, I'm just,
That's what I'm trying to figure out too.
yeah, I just personally don't like the location either. I think it's too close to the slope. It's gonna cause even more issues with drainage and everything else, and
Well, from what I saw on Boland Road and all around, your homes and everything, there's drainage issues. I mean, and that's uncontrollable. But here, with at least an association, they'd have to have control over that drainage. And that's where I think that's an advantage compared to your properties that have no advantage on that.
Ma'am, are you asking us? So you're directing?
No, she's just
I'm-
making.
I'm making a comment, and when I make a
comment.
comment, I'm saying it so everybody can hear, okay?
Okay.
Because it's not your turn to talk yet.
Those water issues
No.
that you're talking about?
Not yet.
What happened?
I'm sorry, there's a decorum.
We're still trying to figure out the sense of the board.
We're not all.
Okay,
all
we're
on
not
public
engineering
hearings.
this, although the engineering requirement is that it produces less water, less than current. So it's an improvement in that sense, but,
Equal to
okay, all
what?
It's no increased runoff from the site.
right.
But
Okay.
decrease in volume,
Okay.
because it's headed towards, what's called channel protection.
Yeah,
Give a little,
give it to us again.
so what,
Do you have a diagram of it or anything like that
Of
for channel
the-
protection, as you call it?
I'll explain what channel protection is. So the DES put a rules in 2008 about channel protections. Channel protections protect wetlands, water bodies, and such. One of the requirements is to minimize the amount of volume towards sensitive ecological places like water, wetlands, or nearby water bodies. One of those is to reduce the volume during a 2-year storm event. Another one is to reduce the rate by half during a 1 year. You have to do that in a 2-year event. So, channel protection is one thing that the DES is, it's the most difficult thing to adhere to. And so, that's what's gonna have to happen here. We'll have to adhere to channel protection. It's basically so you're not sending any more runoff volume to a water body or a wetlands or the rate. It's a great way to protect the wetlands or a water body. You can't send that off, that also has to go through a treatment, or what's called a treatment practice, so it needs to be removing of nitrogen, phosphorus, and some other.
Okay.
So that's how we're gonna design that. We have to adhere to those regulations because of the amount of disturbance, so because the disturbance is greater than 100,000 square.
And whether it was at the top or the center,
Doesn't matter
we
where
still
it
have
is.
to have.
Yeah,
Right.
you have to have, which is great.
Yes,
It protects
exactly.
our, yeah.
That's what I
our
like
natural
about it.
resources.
Okay, Larry?
Mr. Chairman, did you wish any advisory motion to move this part of the hearing along, or are we still in our own discussion?
We appear to still be beating a dead horse. Is that,
That, for discussion, my straw vote thought is that if, it's not a horse, it's a camel, that if this camel gets into the tent, it will break the tent, and it is not a useful location. So if you wish to,
For a multi-family,
it's not a useful waiver. So,
Okay.
however you wish
Lynette?
to handle it.
for a multi-family, what keeps them from having more than one, let's say, family live within the premises?
So multifamily development means there's more than 2 units. Are you asking, when we build these condos, is there anything preventing a homeowner from putting more than just their family in it?
Correct.
In the same way that there's no preventing you from inviting your extended family into your home, there's no way to prevent homeowners from inviting their extended family into their home. As a clarification, there's been a lot of talk about elderly housing, and there are state statutes that create guidelines as to what we can do for elderly housing, because there are very strict rules about who you can sell to and who you can't sell to. And in order to protect elderly housing, the state allows that for the age of 55 plus, a development can be restricted to 80% 55 plus. So if this was going to be, if a condition of this board was that this be an elderly housing development, then it would be restricted to be 80% 55 and older.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
That wasn't clear, thank you.
Yeah, and so there's no restrictions. It's actually illegal to restrict if you
That's
can
what I
have
was
your
wondering.
extended family live with you. You can't tell a homeowner who can live in their home.
Can the association?
Sure, there could be bylaws
Okay.
that restrict that. And as far as, I think I'm hearing from a couple members of the board that they would have an alternative where these were not on the ridge line with water views, it's not economically feasible to do that. So we're either going to have water views in a development that is possibly age restricted and possibly not, in these sort of buildings that we plan to be elevated and to cater to 55 plus, or it's going to be a different type of development. There's no building these very expensive, high-class buildings in the middle of the lot with no views. So that's not the alternative for us. And so if your vote tonight was, we would approve multifamily, but you have to put it on the way back of the lot, probably that wouldn't be how we move forward.
Could Mr. Cheney, I know this sounds weird, but could he work with the conservation committee and stuff like that on, instead of removing every tree, maybe flag trees that don't need to be removed and they still get a view?
Yeah, we certainly aren't planning on removing every tree. I think we've tried to make that abundantly clear, both in this, to this board, to the Conservation Commission, and on the sidewalk. Certainly, as we move forward with this development, if it was something that was interesting, we could do our best to flag trees.
Okay. Just a thought.
Okay. So,
I think the issue here is whether it's multifamily or single-family and duplex.
right,
That's the issue.
that is the question.
That's the question.
That's the question.
Correct.
I'm in favor of multifamily, so.
Yeah, me too.
All right.
I changed.
And Larry, you are single
Single family.
Single family? Okay.
How this is currently presented,
That's not the question yet.
That's not the
It's
question.
not engineered,
Yeah.
but I
Okay, well-
I think I heard, though, that,
I mean, that's kind
that
of how
is,
Larry
because, okay.
made the same statement, but anyway, I will,
Well, he's saying single family.
I would be, the way it's presented, no. I don't know, you can say I'm saying this wrong, whatever, but this is my thoughts, and you guys can take it how you want to take it. So, the only way I would consider that waiver would be, this would have to be drastically changed how it's currently presented. Either the building's not so high, not close, so close to the ridge, some sort of means where this would fit in the community, that, for me to support that waiver. But right now, I'm not seeing that, what is here that I can support that waiver. So, and just think lower buildings, you wouldn't need elevators.
So, what I'm hearing from Ryan was so if the buildings were not as high, that might, same location, buildings are not as high? Is that, so,
Well,
no?
it depends on the building, so
But that's another
it's gotta
question
fit
down the line
the,
here.
it needs to fit
That's
the
still
neighborhood
another
better for me to
question.
say, yes, I will approve multifamily in this development.
Okay, and then
I hope that helps, it's the best I can do.
it does.
Well, now that throws me off, so that means potentially it would be 4 buildings that would be 1 story shorter? Is that what you?
No, I was
Oh.
just, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said anything, I was just talking with Ryan there.
So-
Okay, 'cause-
There are a number of possibilities of what could happen on the site. What we need from the board tonight is to look at these waivers. The
Mhm.
first one is, would you consider multifamily versus a single family or duplex
Mhm.
sprawled development? Would you consider multifamily conservation development? Right now, we've got 2 and 2. You're up next. Good luck.
No, I'm not.
Uh,
So I last.
But the next,
I go this way.
The next waiver is the height waiver. If the board is against the height, so first, we have to have multifamily, because if the multifamily waiver is not gonna go through, there's no sense in talking about the height
height,
waiver.
that's right.
Because there's no, we're not gonna build towers of single-family houses that are 4
Right.
stories tall.
I
So
would
we
en-
need to know the multifamily first, and then we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I would entertain multifamily. However, I would not entertain castles in the clouds.
Okay.
The height, so that's a separate
Okay.
one, but I would not,
Right.
So,
Okay, I get
you want
that.
to give my vote on this? I'd entertain, I'd be willing to entertain multifamilies.
Okay.
But on the next one, you're gonna get a no.
Well, we're doing one at a time.
Yeah.
I just compacted this. speed along.
Yeah, like Joe as well. I mean, I'd entertain the multifamily. So go through them one by one, but I am in favor of multifamily.
Well, I mean, the politically correct answer here is multifamily. That's what all the planners, all the futurists all want. I'm not gonna use that as a rationale, okay? My personal opinion would be for the 18 houses, okay? However, recognizing that multifamily is what your proposal is, and whether you should immediately halt that proposal based on my opinion, which is not important as I sit here. Personal opinion has nothing to do with it, okay? We look at the rules, we decide what the rules say, we then allow the landowner to do what falls within their purview. So
So that's why the question.
I am willing to entertain the multifamily. So that means that that's sort of the sense of the board. Okay? Now,
Do we want to talk about the height now? It seems like
Yeah,
everybody's.
now we're on to the height.
Everybody's kind of.
We're moving right
And others offer.
Mr.
when,
Chairman,
on the
yeah.
multifamily before
This
you
is
move
not
Yeah.
a public hearing.
Yeah.
but I'd like to reach into my toolkit and get out the monkey wrench and throw it into the center of the room. Now that you're gonna begin to talk about whether you are amenable to a height waiver, to go to, how many feet? 43 feet. I do have to remind you that this concept design that you're looking at is not the only design that you could be given by the potential developer here.
Correct.
You
Right.
don't have to have 3 buildings to have the number of units that they want that is financially feasible or marketable. They don't have to subdivide out 5 acres out of this 50-acre parcel. They could subdivide 7 or 8 acres or 10 acres out and have more than 3 buildings. Those buildings might be 1 story shorter, but there might be more buildings because you're taking off those units off the top. So I just want you to think about that when you consider your amenity towards the 43 feet or possibly something less or not at all.
Yeah, I picked up on that a few minutes ago, and that's what I was.
Right, well, then you'd
Trying
have
to-
fewer trees because you need more views, because you have more
So-
buildings. You can go around and
There's
around.
lots more
Right.
knowledge there to do that.
All
So
right.
if we somehow
So-
don't try to speed this up here,
Yeah, we,
So
we're gonna be in
Right.
trouble.
we're
Well,
talking
we
about the
don't look at it, everything.
We're talking about the difference of 35 feet, which is not in the cluster rules, is it?
no,
It's in zoning.
And 43 and a half feet, which is 8.5 feet difference,
Mhm.
okay, or 1 story. Okay. And I talked to the fire chief yesterday, and in terms of whether they could put fires on a 43-story, 43-foot building, and he said, yeah, no problem.
okay, well, he is here,
Yep.
so, if you would.
Yeah, 2 different things with the zoning. There's the life safety aspect of it, and then there's the aesthetics and, what was the word? The view, Larry?
View shed.
So I'm not here to determine one way or the other as far as the aesthetics versus the life safety, but as far as life safety goes, the code requires the building to be sprinkled, so it will be sprinkled, and the height, whether it's 35 feet or 43 feet, that doesn't affect our operation at all. So, and as far as medicals, there'll be a elevators in the building, so that doesn't affect our ability whether we're going up 3 stairs or 4 stairs. So life safety, that doesn't affect us. But again, it's not the
You
premises
wouldn't
of the
need any
building
special
necessarily.
equipment.
Okay.
That would all have to be determined through the site plan and access, which will all be needed.
All right, so
Are you assuming
we
only
are,
one building on fire? or
we're
all-
not
Please.
assuming anything. We don't have a plan yet to assume with.
But I go back to the building will be sprinkled, so it kind of alleviates the life safety concern of the buildings and the units.
All right, so you got that answer. So, now our sense on height waiver doesn't sound promising to you.
This would be a conditional use.
Right.
Different than, so it's conditional use to the tables, you're allowed 25% on this table of the dimensional requirements, so that's what we're asking for, it's a conditional use. But yes, go ahead with this.
So, how do we feel, well, let's officially, unofficially say
I'm
how
not
we
for the
feel about the
40.
height.
Okay, I'm not for the 43.
Okay? Larry?
Disregarding the impact on the steep slopes and disregarding the cutting of trees, there is an inescapable light pollution because you are sending the indoor light up into the air about 30 feet, which is about at the roof line for a two-story home. What it also brings into question is something that I've read military, the defensible summit. The defensible summit in a war zone is below the top of the mountain, so you are protected from having your head shot off at the very top. This is not a defensible summit presentation. It gets its value from being extraordinarily visible so that it can literally look down. You have horizontal light and you have down looking from that. Right now, if my figures are correct, the average house in the state of New Hampshire, median, is $252,000. The average tax load is $5,388. If you are talking sprinkler buildings, you are moving into a $400,000 property, which is cost. But again, I come back to the height of the building, the exposed front of the building, the light pollution, and its impact on steep slopes.
So, height or no?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bruce, if you,
I do feel compelled to clarify to the board that they're not asking for a waiver in this instance. They're asking for a conditional use permit, or whether you're inclined to give a conditional use permit. I'm gonna talk to you about the fact that there, under 9A, there is a table that says that the maximum height is 35 feet. However, under 9F, it talks about this: the planning board may authorize variations from the above standards, except for any requirement provided by state regulation or mandated elsewhere in this ordinance by up to 25%, by a conditional use permit issued pursuant to Section 5 for the purpose of providing flexibility in the design of the subdivision to meet the objectives of this section. When you go to Section 5, it says, authorization to issue that conditional use permit, and it says this. So I'm gonna give you 3 things that you have to consider as criteria for you to be inclined to issue a conditional use permit when they ask for 43 feet. I'm gonna also tell you that when you do the calculation, 25% more of 35 feet comes to 43.75 feet. Let me read this. Notwithstanding other provisions of Milton zoning ordinance, authority is hereby granted to the planning board as allowed under RSA 674-21, Roman 2, to issue a conditional use permit to modify the requirements of this section as follows. 1, such modifications shall be consistent with the purposes and objectives of this section. So you have to go back and read the objectives, by the way, in this open space subdivision section of the zoning ordinance. 2, all lots comply with New Hampshire DES for subsurface wastewater management. Well, that's a kind of a moot point here because you're going to talk about it. 3, falls within the standards contained herein. And 4, shall not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. So those are the criteria you have to consider when asking to issue a cup for 25% more, which is allowed if you issue the cup. Those are the 3 or 4 things.
Thank you, Bruce. We'll stop calling it a waiver.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
but I mean, it goes beyond that.
Well, I know.
I'm giving the board the criteria that you should consider when you give them the answer.
That puts a different scope on it.
Yes.
Bob?
When you say 43.5 feet, where's the measurement taken from?
43 feet, but,
Whatever.
right.
Okay.
uh,
Where's the measurement taken from?
It's the ground mean. So,
Okay.
But in here, it says measured from the entrance of the garage.
right, and that's what we're
So
asking
is that what
for.
you're,
Yeah.
So the,
so
the
that's where
grade
you're
at the
measuring it
entrance,
from then?
yeah,
and
that's-
the
Going by
garage
what's
is
in
like
here,
in the
not the mean.
basement.
Yeah, it
What
would be
is?
pull under, yeah. So there'll be pull under and then the garage is across, in the brown.
Yeah,
So
that's
yes.
what I thought, yeah. So it's not in the basement, but you mean it's lower like a
No,
basement?
the garages would be,
Above ground.
right, when you pull in.
Yes.
It's gonna
That's
be
what I meant.
Yeah.
the entrance of the garages, so it's on the,
Yeah, so that's
say
kind of the
back
slab.
side.
So that's the lowest point. So the ground over on the other side might be up over here, but you're,
Right.
yeah, so you're
Right, I
measuring
got
from
you.
what,
Okay,
You
so
have to
on the
be-
garage side, it's 43 feet. What's it on the back side?
yeah,
Less than 10 feet?
could be, yeah, could be less, could be, yeah, it all depends on the grades when you're finishing up grading out the, that's why we need to pick that point, so we had something to discuss. So if you back this thing into the side of a hill, you know, you could shorten that thing, it would still stick out on that side of the hill pretty high, or you do, or the other way around, vice versa, so. So that's why we picked the garage, because we haven't designed the grades and what elevation we want to be at. I mean, we could come in here and shave off the top and drop down 25 feet, and then it's a whole different, or you build up the site, you
All
know.
depending on your.
So you need some way to manage that, so we picked the garage. So it's not so arbitrary.
if we consider that the
But-
garage entrance area is the cellar,
Yeah, sure.
okay, then we're talking, what, 3 stories? Not counting the cellar?
You have to be counting the cellar. If the cellar's the garage.
3 stories and a cellar.
3 stories and the cellar, yeah.
No, 4 stories.
No, 4 stories.
No, you're talking
If
4
you're-
stories, is that, please don't.
Sorry about the confusion.
It's your, you have the floor.
So, we'd have 3 stories above that. So, to answer your question, when normally measuring, you find the mean height of the building on the grades. But we don't have the grades, so 35 feet is like, so if you've got this slope like this and you put a building there, you take a point here, point there, and that's, you take the mean, which is essentially the average of the height. So, we chose that because then you wouldn't go through that complication being on steep slopes or up on an embankment. You wouldn't have those variations because
All right, so to further, all right, looking at this, the brown areas are the garages, okay? they face the 46 acres that's not developed, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what's facing the Bowling Road and is visible for people outside of the development is 3 stories of house.
Yeah, it could be the 43, because that could be all at the same grade.
Yeah,
The
well, it
garage
could be,
come
yeah.
up- Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why we picked that
But
grade.
Okay.
if the grade goes like this, then all you're seeing is the 3
And so
stories.
you have the hill, then you come off, and so you're looking at that angle, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So it's a way so you can, we need some way to measure without showing the grade, so we can.
Grade 1. Now,
Understood.
do you,
No, I get it.
picture a flat roof? You do, okay. Go ahead, Larry.
Very simple. Draw a line starting at 0, going up to 10. Your house is at 5 foot, halfway up from 0 to 10. That's your mean height. The building goes up 40 feet. It's only 35 feet high at the 10 feet side. It is 45 feet high down at 0. In the middle, at the mean, it is 40 feet high. That's simple math. There's your answer.
Yeah, that's
and-
why we didn't want to.
Trying to be helpful, you'll permit me my courteous sarcasm is, it would be wonderful to be walking on those 43 acres of bird song and pine tree and see 40 feet of elevation.
If that's your thing, then that's cool.
That's not okay. That's not okay.
But I understand sarcasm.
We're trying to take this seriously,
I-
please.
I phrase it with courtesy, but you do see the contrast for the.
The idea is that the developer wants to put the buildings up there, they'll make them green, they're gonna have dark trim, it's as least invasive as possible, that's the goal. So when you're looking at this, you're not looking at like, a house that has white siding and white trim, so it's just blaring out there, the idea is to
Okay.
forest
Right.
green, black trim.
I
But-
would recommend that we go down the board and give our, what do you call it, straw poll
Yes.
vote or on this conditional use permit. If you want me to start, I will.
Go ahead.
No,
do
we
it.
have to go in order. Go
Okay.
ahead. We'll start with Larry.
What point would the
Conditional
chair like to
use.
request? Am I in favor of this conditional use of the 25% in addition? No, thank you.
Okay.
After hearing what Bruce had to say on what the conditions were and everything, I had to change my idea on this, so I am for it.
Okay.
I'm for it.
I would not be for it.
No.
Nope.
All right. Then the noes have it. Okay.
Thank you for that discussion, that was very helpful.
You explaining it better made it more visual to me too, thank you.
Yeah, I wish we, that, thank you.
All right. We have one more point. Is that,
So that's really the big, the height is the biggest thing. I think that once we know that, then we kind of know where to go.
okay?
So that's very helpful. Yes, we made a lot of progress, right, in this next couple of minutes, knowing where to go, how to do things. So, is there any other questions that the board has that I could answer before?
Or feedback for us to consider as we're deciding.
Yeah, I know Ryan was talking about maybe moving the buildings, we had some, which is not really,
Well, the engineering is going to be a question.
yeah,
I
that's
mean,
gonna be.
As long as you're talking mean altitudes, you really can't determine, what we're looking at.
Right.
Can you move
Okay.
that drink in right there so
Well-
no one trips over it, honey?
Walter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Our goal was to try to produce the maximum tax rate for the town. And so that was why the height. So it just changes the whole, you know, we're gonna go back to the drawing board and see what we can do, but we were selling the view. And without the view, it's difficult to do what we had in mind. It's gonna cost a fortune we're gonna build the same amount of road, and we have the driveway, you know, we have all the same costs. I'm just, because the board was great, you know, we got everything we wanted. And I'm just trying to explain what our original goal was, to try to produce the maximum tax rate. And based on where the town's at, that's difficult for us to do. We're still gonna dream up something and see what we can do from it. And I'm sure there's gonna be some happy medium we can come with. That's why we didn't push the buildings back. It all makes sense to put it in the middle of the building, the whole 50 acres, but then we don't have any value. It's a whole different thing. So I just wanted to explain that.
Okay, well, we were just looking at the concept.
Yep. Nope,
Okay, and that's,
all.
so we have taken you beyond that concept.
Yep.
All right?
Thank you.
Anything else on the board? Okay, we'll,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, we're gonna hear from, members of the audience. Remember, this is not an open hearing, okay? But I'm gonna listen, I'll give you a couple minutes. Don't repeat the same stuff, please. You know, I'm gonna have this gavel, but I would prefer that you just maintain some sense of what the people before you have said. So I will entertain, I guess, what is that, a phone?
Well, my hand, actually.
Oh, okay. Please. Not next, so I
Pretty
picked it.
loud, most people can hear me without the microphone. My
No,
name is
I
Barry
would-
Carr, and I live
okay.
at 285